Hey Dude,
The 90s Called
with Christine Taylor and David Lascher.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Hey Dude, The 90s Called podcast. I am David.
Hi David, I'm Christine, your co-host.
What's up, Christine?
I have a little bit of a throat thing.
Oh, no.
I think it's a little bit of a cold, but I think it's also because I was at the Knicks game the other night and was screaming.
Oh, that's what it is.
I mean, I think it's a combination. No, my throat was starting to feel a little bit sore, and then I went to the game, and it was, the Knicks blew them out, which was
the Game 5, the punchback game. That was awesome.
And then it was just a lot of screaming. So I'm sort of my voice is a little bit.
It's good.
Weak.
You helped get the win.
It was definitely me for sure.
It was definitely you're screaming. I don't know if our listeners are watching the NBA playoffs, but the Knicks team is so resilient, and they're like a next man up kind of team. Someone gets injured, next guy's up, and they have so much heart.
It has been so much fun to watch, and I'm sorry because I know we have listeners that are Sixers fans, and you hate us. Same with Indiana, you hate us. Everybody. By the way, the media. Ben really goes after it because it feels like even nobody believes in this team, and they just it's like the little engine that could. They just keep going and keep going and keep winning and keep, shutting everybody up. So listen,
I love watching all the teams, honestly. Like there are players on the Sixers, there's players on the Pacers that I think are just going to be phenomenal.
It's amazing.
I'm happy the Knicks are winning, but NBA basketball playoffs is so damn exciting.
It's been fun. Really fun in our house. Like we get, we have to plan everything around the game.
Ben is he's the biggest Knicks fan in the world.
Die hard. And it's so funny, David, because it's like you, me, Elisa Donovan. I have a couple other friends that when the games are going on, it's like that. Those are my texts that I'm getting. It's like, you and I are texting. Elisa's texting us both. Like, it's so fun to have a few friends who follow.
And I'm proud to be known as a Knicks fan. If people know, I got a call from my friend Scott Kaplan, who hosts a radio show on ESPN radio. He's like, will you come in tomorrow afternoon, talk about the Knicks? I'm like, heck yeah.
And I love it. There. And you live right in LA and you're all Knicks. I love it.
Yeah, I went in and just, I was very excited.
I love it. All right. Well, our guest is in the waiting room, and this is like, we are so excited to have Rob Morrow on, who is just
one of my favorite actors, honestly, of our generation. So good.
He's so good, and he's such a good guy. Ben's known him forever. I've known him over the last 15, 20 years or so, and he's just such a sweetheart. So why don't we let Rob Morrow in? Hi, friend.
Hey there. How are you? Nice to see you, Christine.
Hi.
How's it going?
It's so good to see you, Rob Morrow.
Oh, thanks.
It's such a treat. Welcome to our podcast.
I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
And this is David, my lovely David. Co-host.
How are you guys?
Hey, Rob. Yeah, great to meet you, man. Thank you for being here. I'm really psyched to talk to you.
My pleasure, yeah.
You always have Rob and I, you go so far back with Ben.
For sure.
Like the early New York days. And Ben actually reminded me, he said Rob did an episode of the Ben Stiller Show. He was one of our guests.
Oh, no way.
It's funny, because I wrote a memoir during COVID, and so I came upon that in my memory so I got a copy of that episode. It was such a great show.
I just watched it today because Ben reminded me.
You never saw it?
No, I watched the whole show back in the day, but I couldn't. I wanted to rewatch your episode.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And, David, I don't know if you know, when Ben had his show, it was like a sketch show, but he had guest stars on that would sort of, they'd chat in between the sketches and then they'd throw it to the sketch, right?
Oh, yeah, I remember.
That was sort of the idea. And Rob, your bit with Ben was so funny that Ben had auditioned.
Which was total bullshit because he wasn't, he might have been up for Northern, but we certainly didn't audition together or anything. But it was a fun little gag.
Such a funny bit that Ben had auditioned for Northern Exposure and obviously was terrible and didn't get it. Ben's joke was, well, they obviously went with a different type.
Yeah. And it's funny because I think it kind of it was really ahead of its time in a way. It totally showed Ben off for the filmmaker he became.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, they famously won the Emmy Award after being canceled, right?
Oh, is that true? That's right. I forgot that.
Exactly.
Wait, David. So, what's your? You seem like you know everything about TV. What's your like? How you pulled that obscure fact out of nowhere? Like, are you?
Well, we interviewed Ben, and Christine is one of my first co-stars ever on a TV show we did for Nickelodeon, and
which one was that?
It was called Hey Dude.
Hey Dude. Oh, I see. That's how we get here.
Yes, that's how we get here.
It's
right?
a jumping off point. Yes.
And it was in the 90s. It was like a couple years early 90s. And so so we were teenagers when we did that show together. And now we're back. So yes, but David has the same sort of love of TV and filmmaking and all of it that we all share. But and the 90s too, which is so nostalgic, and I'm sure you'd have to talk about it a lot, being on one of the biggest shows in the 90s.
Well, it's funny lately, more so than ever, because Northern Exposure is streaming for the first time on Amazon, and so it's created, and it's so fascinating. Like, I mean, just yesterday I put up a picture, and it's just a barrage of social media. People jumping on and asking questions and telling me stories about how they never watched it, now they're watching, or they watched it, now they're introducing it to their kids. And one of the things that I find most fascinating, because when I was writing this book, I hadn't looked at those shows since I did them. And so I watched the entire 110 episodes, I think, or something like that. And what's weird is that show, almost more than anything else I can reference, holds up aesthetically. I mean, thematically for sure, because there's universal themes, but even aesthetically, because everyone was wearing, plaid or Eddie Bauer, and they were driving pickup trucks.
Right.
And so aside from the fact that you don't see any phones, it doesn't look dated, which is, I find fascinating.
That is actually so fascinating. You're right. Like, the outdoor gear is timeless.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful
changed.
show. I mean, people like Yellowstone, I think was such a big hit because people wanted to get outside into nature, into a new environment, and your character as the fish out of water. I mean, just the writing. I mean, Josh Brand and John Falsey. It doesn't get better than that show.
Yeah, and I think you make a great point, because I had the same connection with Yellowstone, which I really love, by the way. One of the things, I think I coined the phrase that Northern Exposure was the kind of the cinematizing of television. And it was the first show that I can think of that had landscape as a character, which Yellowstone does as well. Yep. And so the connection is really, I think, for sure there, as well as the native element of Yellowstone.
Yeah, I never missed an episode. I mean, I remember being obsessed with that show for some reason. Yeah.
And I mean, you talked about the Ben Stiller show being ahead of its time. I felt like that show was so ahead of its time, for the reasons we just said, that it was sort of this unique environment, but also the storylines and like you said, there's a lot of universal themes, but it really had this, like, it was real and based in reality, right? But it was magical and whimsical. I mean, right?
Yeah.
And your character was forced to be there, right? He didn't want to be there.
Absolutely, which was the hook, and I think that, the guys, Josh and John, by the way, they also had a great staff of writers, all of whom went on to write for The Sopranos. David Chase, by the way, ran the show for a couple seasons.
David Chase was the showrunner on Northern Exposure.
Wow. And he hated it. He hated the show. He thought it was terrible. And it's funny. He just he needed a paycheck, and he took it. And he I mean, I'm not speaking out of school, because he's been on record as saying he thought it was just just nonsense. He didn't like it at all. all.
Oh my God. I'm surprised you didn't put in
That's-
some like mafia hits in there.
Right. Well, there are a couple little, when I was looking back and realizing I was watching the seasons that he did, there are these little references here and there that you go, oh, that was in the back of his consciousness that connects to Sopranos.
Oh gosh.
But they did, but what I was going to say was Josh and John used to describe the show as a benevolent universe, to your point, Christine. And I love that idea of a place, that is benevolent, especially, in these times, where we have so much craziness going on in the world. I love seeing that people have a bit of a respite from it all when they watch the show.
Where did you film that? I know it took place in Alaska, but where did you shoot it?
We filmed it in Seattle. We had stages outside of Seattle proper city, and then we would go about an hour and a half northeast into the southeast into the Cascades, and that's where the town of Roslyn is, and we would go there probably two to 3 days out of every 8. We'd stay there and
to do exteriors, and they had like moose and wildlife and all that. I mean, because it felt like we were watching Alaska.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, you say they're like these and no acting required scenes because you're just in this wilderness, you're in this beautiful place, and there's eagles and you see a moose, down the way, and so there's something great about that as an actor, as you guys know. You don't have to really create that.
The show we did was set on a dude ranch, and we shot in Tucson, Arizona, and it was very similar. That we were dealing with a lot of the elements. It did not look like Northern Exposure. Ours was on.
Was it an hour show?
Oh no! It was a multi-camera situation comedy, right, David? We can call it a sitcom, but no laugh track, and it was set outdoors. So it was all on video, but it had a very flat look. I think like you didn't get the Yellowstone.
It was literally the opposite of what Rob just said about Northern Exposure being the cinematic beginning of television.
No, but there was some no acting required moments that we had because of the heat and the coyote and the cacti.
And we had great writers. I got to say, Graham Yost was our head writer.
No way. Oh, he's amazing. Yeah. Wait, how many seasons did that last?
We did 5 seasons over 2.5 years. So it was like 65 episodes worth. They only did 13 a season. And I mean, this was Nickelodeon. It was the early days of Nickelodeon. So it was kids television for kids, very gentle. Like, it was real. Like I wouldn't say it's timeless. It's very dated. It looks very 90s, but there were no labels. It wasn't as flashy as the Nickelodeon shows our kids grew up watching. It wasn't cool.
Yeah.
It wasn't cool.
Yeah. Right.
It was sweet and simple.
Right. But you guys liked it.
Oh yeah.
Or you liked doing it.
We did. Yeah.
That's good.
We were so young.
It was our junior and senior years of high school, I think, right? And we were living at a hotel in Tucson, just doing doing our thing.
We didn't know anything. We didn't know anything about anything.
It was fun.
So you're a native New Yorker, yes? The suburbs.
Well, I was born in New Rochelle, raised in White Plains, Scarsdale.
I'm from Scarsdale. I grew up in Scarsdale my whole life.
Oh wait, what high school?
Scarsdale High School, class of '90.
Oh my God! So I was at Edgemont.
Oh wow!
But well, Alex Witchell, she was older than you, probably, right? Yeah. Do you know Alex Witchell? She's married to Frank Rich.
No.
No, she went there, and Aaron Sorkin went there too.
Yes. I actually went back to. It was not last summer. The summer before they. I don't know. They put my name up on the wall, and it's next to Aaron Sorkin. For the the alumni fundraising association or something.
There you go.
I remember I was telling Christine the other day that Josh Molina and his cousin Joel Molina, Joel played George M. Cohan in this play, and he was my camp counselor, and he's the reason that I wanted to become an actor. He was phenomenal, and it was Josh's cousin. But yeah, there's a bunch of us kicking around from Scarsdale.
Yeah, I loved living there. My mom still lives in White Plains, and I love it up there. I could easily. You guys, where do you guys live up there, Christine?
We're up in Westchester. Yeah, we're up in Chappaqua. Yeah.
It's so great. I miss it. We live in LA. We were kind of both coasts for a while, and then we kind of focused mainly out here, with our daughter in school and stuff. And now we're thinking maybe of getting our way back to New York.
I see you in New York all the time. That's why I just always think of you as a New Yorker. And I always just think, yes, exactly.
Blood.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So coming from, White Plains, Scarsdale, were you the typical theater kid? Like, did you start out doing theater in all of your school plays, or what was your path?
I had a weird path. Like, I was a real kind of ne'er-do-well, I joke, but I don't think it's far from the truth that I didn't pass a test from the 7th grade on. And I stopped going pretty much around then too, which is why they sent me off to this prep school, which did save my life, I think, in a certain way. I was in trouble, I was shoplifting and doing petty, stupid stuff, and had no focus, and was not interested in anything that I should have been interested in, or anything that anyone told me to be interested in. And I got kicked out of school at Edgemont in 10th grade after I came back from prep school. And I went to live with my dad, who my parents were divorced. And I discovered acting I went to the movie Grease, and I had never thought about it before, although I was a bit of a class clown, but like it never was something in my consciousness. And I went and sitting something I had this epiphany watching John Travolta in that movie. He just looked like he was having so much fun. And I thought, I can have fun, I know how to have fun. I
that I'm good at.
I knew I couldn't hold a job, like a normal job. And so then I had this raison d'etre. It was like I was so focused, and I got into the drama program, and I got the leads right away in plays. And I worked as an extra in the movie Caddyshack. And
no way.
That kind of exposed me. I'm like, where's Waldo in that movie? I'm
everywhere. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
I ended up.
That's part of history, though. It's
part of history.
Yeah.
And it was wild because, the movie went over budget, and I had caddied as a kid, so they loved me. Brian Doyle Murray would make sure I got in all these shots because I was a real caddy and I looked like I knew how to hold the bag or whatever. And the movie went over, and all the caddies that were kids had to go back to school. But I was like, forget school. And so I cut for 6 weeks and became like a bit of a mascot. They all like took me under their wing, and, the camera guys would show me the cameras, and Michael O'Keefe would tell them on the lunch line that I was the star of the movie. And I was just this extra, I was nothing. And at the end of the movie, and I fell in love with movie making. I got really into all the aspects of movie making. And at the end of the movie, Brian Doyle Murray writes his number on a little piece of a call sheet. And he says, if you ever get to New York, give me a call. And so it was like the Willy Wonka ticket in my wallet.
Oh, wow.
And I got out of school. I took a GED. I cheated on it. I left. I was in New York.
Cheated on your GED.
I cheated on it.
Great.
And I end up in New York before I'm 18. And so I call him, and eventually I get through to him, and he says, yeah, come on up. It was SNL 1979. And he says, bring some pot. And I was like, oh, okay. And I'm thinking I'm just going to show up there as like, whatever, get high with him. I didn't know what. I just went. And it happened to be that Rodney Dangerfield was the host. And and he says, we got you in a sketch. You're going to be an extra in the sketch. And this is called Substitute Judge. And you'll be one of the jurors. And I was like, cool, And cut to 14 years later, I'm hosting the show. And I go on Monday, you go in and you meet with Lorne to get the lay of the land. And I said, I was on the show. And he was like, what do you mean? I said, yeah, I was. And he gets they get them to pull up the footage, and sure enough. And so in my monologue, I talk about this that I had been on the show, and
did they get a clip? Did they get a clip of you?
Yeah, they show
Oh
a clip
God,
of me.
That's so great.
Yeah.
How generous of Brian Doyle Murray, though,
It was so cool.
So cool.
I mean, I don't know why he did it. I don't know what it was. It wasn't, and it was nothing kind of untoward or, it just was, I don't know whether he just, that, all the Murray brothers were caddies. So there was this kind of bond about that, the loopers they're called, and it's a tough gig, and I think that I had done that and that I just was so enthusiastic, and I don't know, he just, but it was a big.
He just earned his respect. It seems like he just thought you were cool.
Yeah, and some people do. Some people pay it forward.
Yeah,
and it goes on and on. I'm sure you do that to people as well. Because of that.
I try, yeah, for sure.
We were laughing because we watched. I mean, now I've got to rewatch it again to look for you in every shot. But
like a little fat version of me everywhere in that movie.
I'm dying. But Ben and I were laughing so hard because that movie was just, we all grew up watching it, and it was that country club was supposed to be the epitome of the elite. Right. And Ben, when we were watching it, he pointed out, he's like, look, you can see like power lines in the background. Then you see a highway in the back. Like it was
a shitty little, it was a shitty little
totally, but it didn't matter. Like when I saw it, I thought, oh my God, the Rolls Royce and it just seemed so prestigious. But then when you watch it now, it's so funny. So, all right, we got to give it another rewatch.
Yeah, you guys should read. There's a book called Cinderella Story. I don't know if you've ever read it.
Oh, I don't know that.
It's a biography of the making of Caddyshack. And it was like, at the same summer, they were filming the Blues Brothers. And Caddyshack was like the little underdog with, barely a script. And it's an amazing story of the making of the movie.
Yeah, it's funny because I got to get that book because I remember one of the little anecdotes in my book is I remember saying to the script supervisor, again, I knew nothing about anything. I was like, why does it seem like they're just, making it up each time? And she was like, because they are, sweetheart.
Because they are. At the end of the movie, I'll just really quickly, they realized that Chevy Chase and Bill Murray were never on screen together. No, so in the book, they had wrapped the movie and they were in editing and they realized that Chevy Chase and Bill Murray had never been on screen together.
Oh, funny.
So that scene in, Bill Murray's little cavern was completely after the movie had wrapped and they had edited it. And they said, we have these two big stars. We need them in a scene together. And they pretty much improvised the whole thing.
That's funny. And I'll bet you it was because I got it last week. Someone asked me to come do a benefit at a country club in LA, and they said this is where Caddyshack was filmed, and I didn't say anything because I was like, well, but I wonder if they picked up the shots out here. I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
Bill
Murray was funny, man. Bill Murray would come he would come there's 7 a.m. call, and he would kind of come barreling in on this old 59 green boat convertible car, and he'd get out of the car and you could tell he hadn't been to sleep yet, and he'd have a drink in his hand. It was such an interesting opening to showbiz.
Different time, right?
Different time.
The greatest comedic talents ever. So then how quickly did you start getting acting work? I mean, where did that lead?
It was kind of a classic. It was about 10 years of before Northern Exposure. It was like that Malcolm Gladwell book, Outliers. It was like 10 years to the day. And about the first two were really rough, literally living on fumes. And then
in New York City.
Yeah. Living in little apartments with Toby Parker, Sarah Jessica's brother, and Pippin Parker. We all were roommates and sharing this dive in Hell's Kitchen and on St. Mark's Place and working in movie theaters and doing I just went from job to job to job, and because I would quit them as soon as I got some little dinky play. I did hundreds of little plays in basements that no one saw. And then eventually I started to get commercial work. And that's kind of saved me because I would do one or two. I did everything. You name it. I hawked it. And I did 2 nationals a year, which pretty much covered my nut. And and then I just started doing more and more theater. I co-founded Naked Angels, which was, still in existence, believe it or not, like 35 years later. And interesting enough, I'm just about to start rehearsals on a play that I did at Naked Angels in 1989 that Robbie Bates wrote, called The Substance of Fire. And I was the son, the middle son, and Ron Rifkin was the dad. And we did it as a one act at Naked Angels. And then we took it to the Long Wharf in Connecticut, where it became a 3-act. And then I got Northern, and I couldn't do it when I moved into the city. But now having played the son, now I'm playing the father a billion years later.
That's so
That's
cool.
so
Full
cool.
circle.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Are
I
you
love
doing
I love synchronous. I love these kind of synchronistic things that happen. These signposts. I talk about a lot in my book. These, my little Caddyshack story is one. John Travolta is another one. He was. I wouldn't say he was the reason I became an actor, but he was a catalyst. And then I ended up working with him, a couple times. And like, there's something about that reinforces, those signs that reinforce the journey. And I don't think they're
that you're in the right
to
place, right?
Yeah,
that you're in the right place, that this is
Yeah.
moving along as it should. I so agree with you.
Yeah.
And those days living in a small apartment in New York, doing play after play, I mean, do you look back on them like with like fond memories? Because that youthful, carefree thing is so amazing.
Absolutely. I mean, it was glorious, and I even knew, I even knew it then, I wasn't unhappy. I mean, I'm sure I had my days, but like I was so happy. I mean, the first few years I actually did a lot of technical, like I would do anything to get in a theater. So I would be a gopher, or I'd clean the stages, or I'd be an assistant stage manager, an assistant lighting designer, assistant anything. And I love showbiz. I still, even after all the slings and arrows, I still love showbiz. And so when I was first getting, from Caddyshack on into those days in these little theaters where I was helping design the lights or put up the lights, not even design, I just loved it all. And so, so it just felt like it just felt like I was in the right place for what I was meant to do, I guess.
I mean, Christine and I talk about the theater is the best place to start, because you'll learn very quickly whether you love it or you don't.
Yeah.
And if you love it, then you gotta keep going.
But it's funny because nowadays, it's funny. I have a daughter who's 22, and she's a really good little actor, and she's making her way. She's getting work. She's gonna find her way. She's that determined and good, but she does not and will not do theater. Like, she's just not interested, and it drives me crazy. And I was working with Paul Giamatti, and I said, I was telling this, I said, it's ridiculous. How could you not, that's where we learn. It's like what you said, like, and he said, look, just because you did it that way, that's not the only way. Mm-hmm. And so it made me think differently, because there are the Jack Nicholsons of the world who never did a play, and or doesn't, and they're amazing. But I agree with you. I think it's the only place the actor gets to experience the whole story in one, and so I find it really important. And
yes, especially for the actors, because, like I think of my kids who were not athletes in high school. They weren't on sports teams in that way, but by doing plays, you found community too.
You found the camaraderie.
You found your people, and you worked collectively to make that opening the best it could possibly be, just like a sports team is, like they work together to win the game. And I feel like that is just, both of my kids were sort of like, Ella found it a little earlier, but Quinn, because of, COVID and everything, and not really having a traditional entry into high school, it was like 10th grade getting that school play. He was like, the skies opened. Yeah. And it was like, I've never experienced this kind of, camaraderie and connection to people in that way. So I think you're right.
I think you're right. And I keep saying that to her now, because she still doesn't have really her community. And I'm like, that you talk about, you asked me about those years, and it's like the community of those people, the gang, when we were building the space at Naked Angels and doing these plays and going out after, that shaped me as in many, many ways for who I am. And it's funny. I don't know where I was listening to Bradley Cooper the other day on some interview, and they were saying, like, what do you think the main reason you were able to find success? And he said, because of the community that was around me when I was coming up, the love, the belief, the support. And I think that that's really crucial. I wish I could get my daughter to get that, to see that, but
it'll come, right?
Yeah.
She sounds very sharp and very smart.
She is.
Like her parents.
Yeah. And as it is that whatever you say, they have to do the opposite. So
right.
Always.
Don't push too hard.
Always.
Right.
She'll find theater.
Okay, so you were about to do this play with Ron Rifkin, and then you said you got Northern exposure during that period. So what you obviously auditioned for that in New York. Was it?
I did. I auditioned New York, and then they flew me out to, and I just fit. It just felt good, and it read like nothing I'd ever read in terms of TV. And I was on a plane to LA, and then I did a test at this, or I read for them at the studio, and then I went in and did the those network tests, which are so bizarre,
awful,
just awful, in a basement
awful.
with no, and they don't sing. They're so not.
It's cold.
They're just. I don't understand. I think in a business that deals with the personal, they do nothing to make it easy or comfortable.
So right. You're so right. It is the opposite of what the intention is, but you got through it.
I got through it.
And did you have that experience? I know you and Ben joked in the sketch that Ben was there and he went in and that never happened. But do you remember some of the other people that were there, or were you the only one there at the time? Because I have vivid memories of those auditions.
Who you tested against?
Yes.
I have a pretty clear memory of that day. And I remember coming down into the basement. It was at, CBS Television City on Fairfax and Beverly. And I came down the basement, and there were all these posters from all these shows that I grew up with. And I turn a corner and it's all cinder block and bad lighting. And there's a bunch of metal chairs outside of a room, and there's about 4 or 5 girls and one guy. Ooh. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I thought so I knew the odds. I didn't know the odds.
Right, closer than I think, right.
And he was the opposite of me. He was like this waspy, Robert Redford looking guy. And not that it was essential that Joel was Jewish, but, he was written that way. So I thought oh, that's interesting. And when I went to read for the studio the day before, it was so perfunctory that I could tell I was already
their choice,
the creator's choices. I could just sense it. And so I went in, and so I walked down the hall, and we were all sitting there, and, this phalanx of executives come walking down the hall, and they don't acknowledge us, and they walk in this room, and eventually they bring me in, and no one says anything, and and it was black, and it was just this unadorned black space, and I couldn't really see anyone's faces. And I did this thing, which I would take a chair and put my sides on it and then sit on one chair, and so I could have them there. But I knew it cold, so I didn't have to refer to them. But I put my sides down, and I read through the first scene, and I felt a little nervous. But then the second scene, I kind of got into gear, and they said, "Okay, would you please wait outside?" Of course, not saying anything, not like good job or anything.
Right.
So I go outside, and I'm thinking, you've been to these auditions where they tell you to wait outside, and then an hour later they say go home.
Yeah,
and
thank you. Right.
I walk down the hall, and I go into the bathroom, and I was so, you have to kind of create this sense of calm and cool, even though inside you're freaking out, because I am in debt now, $42K, and this is not a pilot. This is 8 episodes off the bat. So
Wow.
if I get this gig, my life is different, right? Aside
Whew.
from whether it would do for my career.
And you've seen the numbers. You've signed the contract.
I've seen the numbers because you
Yeah.
have to make these deal with the devil
For your life.
Yeah.
Sign
test
your life
deals where
away.
you sign away your life. I think those are so heinous.
It's such a mind fuck.
It's such a mind fuck.
Yeah.
You know, it's like 7 years you have to commit.
We got you.
Right.
Yeah.
So I go down the hall, I go in the bathroom, and I just splash water on my face, and I look at my, and it was this bad lighting, so it looks like everything looks bad, and I'm just like, get my breath, and I come walking out of the hallway, and the guy had just gone in after me, is walking toward me, and I'm thinking, oh, he's going to go in the bathroom and do the same thing, but then I turn and I watch, and he goes to the end of the hall, and he takes a left, and
he leaves.
disappears. He leaves. So I'm like, oh man, it's mine to win. And so I go down, and there's all these girls. All the girls were different. There's like a redhead, there's a brunette, there's a blonde, there's a tall one, there's a short one, and I remember kind of trying to talk to Janine, and she just kind of blew me off. So I was like, okay, well, she's not going to get it. And I started trying to flirt with whichever one would flirt with me, and then they brought me in and asked me to read with like all of them. They kept bringing them in, and they kept me in there. So I was like, wow, this is my gig. And, like, because of, I think what we were talking about before, I remember early on in auditioning, I auditioned for a movie that Adrian Lyne was directing called Jacob's Ladder. And I was so nervous, but he saw something in me that he was putting me on tape. He came over and he massaged my shoulders, and it wasn't, there was nothing weird about it. It just was an older artist kind of seeing something in a younger artist and trying to get him to do his best. And I was so grateful for that. So every time I audition people, I don't necessarily give them massages, but I do go out of my way to let them know they have an ally in me, and I can help them. I can make, we can do it again. I can do whatever they need. And so all these girls were kind of so nervous that they couldn't even let it in. And they kind of gone through it. And then Janine came in, and something clicked. We just, there was just a couple moments, like you guys know this experience when you're so in it that everything else disappears, and you're kind of, you are those characters, you are in that setting. And we were the last. And they said, as we were leaving, they said, like, good job. And someone kind of gave me a thumbs up. And I thought, oh, it's us. And we went in, her and I walked to the elevator, and we got in, and I said, it's you and me. And she kind of blew me off. And later she told me she thought I was hitting on her. And I went back to my hotel, the Mondrian on Sunset, and I got the call that I got it. And I just got on the bed, and I jumped up and down for 10 minutes screaming, I'm out of debt. I'm out of debt.
God.
Right. Now I'm on one of the greatest written shows of all time.
Yeah. Which, of course, I didn't know. Like, I knew it was interesting, but,
you never know. You don't.
You never know.
You never know.
Yeah.
And Rob, how old were you then? Were you 20?
I was 29.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you had really paid your dues.
Absolutely.
Like, you had really, you were a true artist. And then to get something that just, listen, a lot of people, it's different. They get the first thing and then they have tougher times later. But to work so hard for something, and like you said, you just loved being around it. You did anything. Then to have that must have just been, like you said, jumping up and down on the bed. I mean, just the feeling, it just must have been incredible.
Such a gift. I mean, I am still eternally grateful. It just was, and it was also like film school for me, that show, because I was so into movie making at that point that I just wanted to know. I spend most of my time in the camera room, and the guys taught me so much about filmmaking, and the interesting thing that I noticed too watching the show recently was on the first season, I'm coming off of 10 years in the theater. So every take is like, hey guys, here's what we need to do. Like, look,
so
I want to
big,
say this.
right?
And
Really?
by the fifth season, I'm like, look, here's the thing. No one's going to say anything. It's just,
You got smaller, right?
absolutely.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, you were so good on that show. You always seemed like a
thanks.
very subtle actor. I mean, you were perfect for that part.
Thanks. Yeah, it fit. It tapped. There were certain kind of corollaries and social economic things that we shared. And then I was able to just tap into something. I don't know. It just was fated, I guess.
And what a change to go from your New York City life to living on location with a very small group of people. Like, what was that transition?
That's what I mean. It's like, that's the corollary too, because as Fleischman was doing the same thing, I was,
right.
And I was under a contract that no matter what, I was stuck. I mean, I got into all this crap years later with contract disputes, but like, it was there was corollaries that I could tap into as an actor because I was aware of them.
You were living it. You and your character. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah. And Seattle was great. One of my regrets is I didn't buy any land up there because at the time I could have bought, it was so cheap and it's a great place to live. Have you guys been there?
I've only been up there once, and that was when I was still living in LA. But I mean, I loved it. I was there for a weekend for something, and it was so great. But the Pacific Northwest is just an area I haven't spent a lot of time now, especially as an East Coaster.
It's so beautiful.
But you've been to Vancouver. You've been many times, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, it's very similar, and that and the thing is, coming from the East, like every day for 5 years, I'd get in my car to go to work, and it'd be raining, and every day I would say, oh, well, tomorrow it'll be sunny.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to get into 1994 was a big year for you. Quiz show. I just rewatched it last night. And what an amazing role. How did that come about? And how psyched were you to get to play that?
So psyched. They just invited me. They're going to do a screening of it here at the Arrow in Santa Monica. I'm going to go. I haven't seen it on a big screen in a long time. It was, I had a lot of heat on me because of the show. I was now a couple of times nominated and Emmys and Golden Globes, and I hosted SNL, and I'm getting offered movies, and I'm turning down everything because not out of arrogance, but because my heroes, right? Maybe you guys had the same. My heroes were the De Niro's and Pacino's and Hackmans and Duvall's, and almost every time out they reinvented themselves. So that's what I thought you should do. And I think it actually hurt my career, like, because I turned down so many big movies that would have given me a box office cred that I don't have to this day. But creatively, I think it worked out, and so I was turning down everything. And then this script came along, and it was Paul Addonazio wrote it, who, was a journalist at the time and then went on to write a lot of TV shows, House. And it was so smart, and it dealt with something that was so interesting. And it also went after TV, and which I was, that was my world, I was making my living in TV. And
yes.
And I read it, and it read like, it was a very complicated script with three basic, my character would be the classic protagonist, but they were all protagonists, Rafe and Turturro's characters. And then I saw Robert Redford's name on it, and and again, this is one of these things where, like, I grew up watching Redford in the movies, and I was soaking in, metabolizing what he was doing before I even knew I would ever be an actor. I just, and so much of my, sensibility in front of the camera, I think a lot of it comes from him and Newman and these guys. And so they asked me to do a tape because I was in Seattle and my schedule was packed. So and they didn't even do a lot of self tapes then, right? So
right.
So they sent me all this material. They sent me videos of Dick Goodwin, who had a very specific manner and cadence with a Boston accent. And he just had this arrogance and kind of idealistic youthfulness and intelligence, and everything about him just fascinated me. And so I kind of read up on him. I watched the videos and I started to kind of, get his manners down. And then I did a tape, sent it off. And I don't know, weeks later, they called and said, Bob Redford wants to, read you and in person. And I was like, I'm there. Those are those kind of auditions where you get them and you're like, I don't care if I get it. If I get to hang out with Robert Redford, cool.
Right. That's the win. That's the win.
Of course.
So I think I happened to be in New York, and they bring me up. I go up to. He had an office on in Rockefeller Center. One of those great buildings, and I go up and I'm sitting in this. I go into this. It's like 3 offices and a waiting room and a conference room, and nobody's there. No receptionist or anything. So I sit down and I'm just waiting and waiting. And, Redford is notoriously late. So like 45 minutes later or half an hour later, Michael Nozick, the producer, who's now a friend of mine, comes out and says, Bob is running a little late, but just relax, hang out. And so, I don't know, it's 45 minutes after I got there, he comes walking out, and I never forget, because I was looking down at like Variety or something, and I saw these cowboy boots and the jeans, and before I looked up, I heard him say, you're good on that TV show. And
oh my God.
And I remember thinking, one, that he even knew that show,
right?
B, that he had a certain disdain in his voice about TV.
TV show, right?
Yeah. And C, that he, was talking to me, and he said, call me Bob. And we hit it off just like that. We just connected. And I went in, and Bonnie Timmerman was the casting director, and we read, and he and I just had a connection. I don't know. And I felt I understood Dick Goodwin. And so I auditioned, and then of course it was the classic thing where it was like, they wouldn't tell us anything. He's notoriously for playing his cards close to his vest, so he wouldn't say anything, except the back channel was that he was really interested in me, but they were scared of my schedule because I had the show to do.
Oh gosh.
And
that would have been such a shame, right? If you have to pass on a film like that.
Oh my God, it killed me. I mean, when I went, I begged. I remember I flew into, when I finally got it, they finally said they're not going to offer it to you unless they know you can do it. Right. So, because they don't want to, it's such bullshit. They didn't want to look like I turned them down, so that whoever, whatever. So I had to fly to LA and go into Tom Thayer, who was the head of TV at Universal, and beg him. He fortunately was a Redford fan, so we got on about all the movies. And
did they have to adjust your Northern Exposure schedule to fit in Quiz Show?
Yeah. They had to adjust.
Wow, and they did it.
Yeah, they don't always do that.
And they did it, and it was insane because I was shooting Monday, Tuesday in Seattle. Then I was on a red eye, and then I was on the set Thursday morning. And it was trippy because and playing 2 characters at the same time, and such a big character. There was a big chunk of the summer that I was able to be in New York and not worry about it. But then as we got into August, I had to start flying back and forth. It was a little crazy, but I was young.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You do whatever.
Yeah.
And dude, you were so good in that movie. I got to say, you're the moral compass of the entire story, surrounded by these corrupt TV executives and wealthy, privileged people. And you're just this blue collar, very educated, Harvard graduate who they're all lying. You know they're all
Yeah.
lying, and you can tell it. And it's like a David and Goliath standing up to the powers that be.
Mm.
And man, you sell it so beautifully. It's such a great movie.
Oh,
I loved it. I loved everything about it. It was like getting invited into the All-Star game. You know, everyone on that show was great at what they did. And it was such a pleasure to work. It's the first time I worked with someone who could, you know, I remember my last line in the movie is a great line where I say, Byron Jennings, the actor, says, you know, congratulations, you got it, you got TV. And I say something like, you know, we didn't get TV. TV is going to get us. And it was this big dolly shot across this congressional hall with all these people around, and big deal. And I knew I could feel the import of the line. It just summed up everything, and it resonates to this day and profoundly. And so we shot a bunch of takes, and I never felt, you know, and it ends, it's the long dolly, and it ends in this kind of medium shot of me. And I went home, as you do, I laid down, I put my head on the pillow, and I was like, oh shit, I know how to do it. And so, but this was the thing. It was like, so I went into Bob the next day, and I didn't expect him. I just said, hey, Bob, you know, I think I know how to do that better. And he was like, really? And I was like, yeah. And he says, all right. And he calls Joe Reedy, the AD, and they change the whole day around. And then he sets it up again so that I can do it. And, but that's that's such a rare situation to be in. And there were many times where he would do that. He would just kind of change it on a dime. And also because he's an actor, right? You know, he's so sensitive to what we do that he would indulge me.
Oh my gosh, what an experience.
Yeah,
and
it was cool.
And the way the movie was perceived, like it was so big. I just remember it was just the movie to see. I remember we were friends like early, this was the early years in LA too for me, but I remember Hank Azaria was a friend of ours and he got cast in it. It was such a big deal. And we all, our whole group of friends went to see it. And it is such a good movie, and how great that you're going to get to see it on the big screen again.
I know. I love Hank. It's like,
that's amazing.
My favorite memory of Hank on that was we would take a van. We shot some stuff out in Jersey where they built NBC studios. And so we would take a van into the city, and Hank had got a bootleg copy of the Jerky Boys. Remember?
The Jerky Boys.
Yes.
So
and
90s.
He would play it. He would so 90s. He would play it, and I would just be crying. I mean, just crying with laughter.
I'll bring all my glasses and my shoes.
And my shoes, right? Them. And Hank, I'm sure, did the best impression of all of them, right?
Course,
exactly.
Yeah, no, totally. That's where he would get me on the set. He would just go. He would just say 2 lines, and I'd be done.
The Jerky Boys. Oh my God.
I just want to know, because I know, I mean, listen, I've known you for years through Project ALS, and you're always working on music. And I just, wondered, before we leave, and I did notice that you did, was it for the holidays? We had Lisa Loeb on last year. She was one of our early guests. And I saw that
90s.
So 90s, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she was amazing. And I saw that you two did something together, and just tell us a little bit about your music and how, and do you go all over the country? Do you just kind of stay in New York and LA? And just tell us a little bit about
I've done it all,
and our listeners.
And Lisa and I kind of became friends with Lisa I knew her back in the day a little bit, and then we became friends on social media, and I just threw out, hey, you want to write a song? And next thing I know, I was in her living room, and we wrote this holiday song that turned out pretty cool. I think it's be a bit of a perennial. Music is interesting. Like the first thing when I was like 5 or 6, I started playing the drums, and I think it's really at the essence of everything I do: rhythm, directing, acting, writing, music. Everything comes down to rhythm for me. And when I was in my 20s in New York, I picked up a guitar. I started to take lessons, and really just to fill time. And I was quickly able to play a lot of 3-chord songs that I like to sing. So I was able to sing. And then I just carried a guitar with me everywhere for years and years on sets and play. And I'd have to deal with my friends rolling their eyes every time I pulled it out. But I got something happen like in my 40s where I started to get really obsessed with music and getting better at it and really learning theory and I was on a show called The Whole Truth with Maura Tierney. It was a drama on ABC that lasted 12 episodes in like 2010. And the show was tanking. They'd aired 6 of them. And the PR people were freaking out. And they came to me one day. Conan O'Brien had just started his new show on TBS or TNT or whatever it was, and it was on the Warner's lot. And they said, Conan's putting a camera in his lobby, and anyone on the lot on any shows can get 10 minutes on this thing, and they're going to put it on their website or whatever. And they just said, because they'd always saw me with the guitar, they said, you got to do a song. I was like, okay. And they said, you got to write one. And I was like, okay. And then they were like, and we need it in 2 hours. And I was like, so
no pressure.
I go to my trailer and I just take a basic blues progression and I write lyrics were apropos to the show. And I get my assistant to make cue cards and we go in and we lay this thing down. It's on YouTube. You can watch it. Not that it's any good, but it like a light bulb went off and I thought, oh, I wrote a song. And there started a journey of writing music and learning how to write music and finding mentors. And now I've written, a lot of music. And I would go to these little places in LA and New York, these little clubs, and I'd ask for the earliest slot, like 7:00, where nobody was there except like 3 guys at the bar. And I sucked, and I'd get up there and I've videoed it. So I would watch it and the guy at the bar would be like, hey, isn't that guy from
that show?
But I had to kind of deal with sucking and I don't suck anymore, but I had to learn. And I guess to answer your question ultimately is there's something about the autonomy of it. I can go in, I'm going to go in there and play a few hours today. I can do that, or I can play in front of 1,000 people. And there's something like I have this innate need, like you guys probably, to express. I have to do it. It's just who I am. And so I don't have to get the job. I don't have to negotiate it. I can just do it.
Right.
And I have this tattoo here that's a St. Augustine quote. It's like a Fibonacci sequence. It goes around and around like this in Latin. It says, he who sings well prays twice. I'm not religious, but it sums up my, like, there's a joy. Music hits us in a way like nothing else. You can't deny it. Like the energy of music, whether you like it or not, it's going to affect you. And so,
and make an imprint in your head, in your heart, in your body, in your soul. It is. I agree with you. And the fact that you can do it anytime you want.
It's joy. It's really joy is what we're talking about.
I love that idea that you don't have to ask permission for anyone to go play music or write a play or write, there are things as an actor where you are sitting around waiting for someone to give you the opportunity to do it.
Right.
But even writing a play, you write a play, you got to get people to do it. You got to.
There's another step. Exactly.
Right. Music. Yeah. You write it, you get up, you perform it. You said in 2 hours, you're recording a song that you just wrote. I have to tell you that Alimi Ballard says hi, and we had him on here. He and I had done a show together, but he told us that you were such a great mentor to him, that you are a great friend, and that you told him that. What did he say? That learn your lines for tomorrow before you get home.
Right.
So you can be present for your family. He remembers like some little droplets of wisdom that you passed on to him. So he wanted me to send you his love.
He's such a sweet soul. I loved, we had a great time on that gig.
Yeah, we didn't even get numbers in, but
I know.
We could talk to you for hours, man. This was awesome.
Well, you guys are so sweet. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. It was so wonderful getting to talk to you, and thanks for giving us the time.
Cool. Well, congratulations on your show, and I'll be seeing you around the world, I'm sure.
Yes.
All
Come to New York soon. And love
Send
to the
my
family.
Love to Ben. Yeah, you too.
Definitely. Give Devin a big hug. I love her.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Rob.
Bye, guys.
That was fantastic.
It was great.
Right.
It was so great. I was going to say early on, because when he first came on, he has the most calming energy, doesn't he?
He really is very zen,
And
very chill.
Yes, and when he talked about his tattoo and his music, and he is really, I mean, I really love. He has so much perspective and wisdom, and still loves. I love that he said, "I still love everything about showbiz." Like he loves it, and it's just he you know, in the years that I've known him, and he's just like he said that about Alimi is such a sweet soul, and Rob really is that too, and he's a big wonderful family.
He's got a lot of wisdom. I feel like you know, even this line he has in Quiz Show at the end of the movie, you know, he's talking to Ray Fiennes, who's gotten away with it, and he tells this story about his uncle had cheated on his aunt, and it was a big deal in their family, and the uncle confessed to the infidelity, and he said it happened 8 years prior, and Rob said, I said to my uncle, if you got away with it 8 years, why would you confess to it? And he said, it's the getting away with it part I couldn't live with. And that to me is the key to that movie Quiz Show.
Yeah.
Just because you can get away with deceiving people doesn't mean that you should or that you can live with it.
Exactly. It's then what you have to carry with you, right? For the rest of your life. Yeah.
Yeah. And Rob was, he's probably 30-year-old, a young guy, but you believe him. You believe the wisdom that he's just such a great actor. And
it sounds like Robert Redford was amazing, and let him, giving him another take on another day, and, just such the quintessential actor's director.
Right.
But that's been on our movie list to give a rewatch too. Like I haven't seen it in a while.
There's so many great moral questions. Yeah, I think the kids would love it. It's a perfect movie. But that was a great interview, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
That was great. All right, come back next week, everybody.
Yep. Thanks for listening. Have a great week.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to subscribe and give us 5 stars.
And please follow us on Instagram at HeyDude, the 90s Called. See you next time.